wrestling fans, welcome to your Saturday morning news headlines. I am Ross Twaddell, joined as ever by Sam Driver on these Saturdays. How are you doing, Sam?
Not too bad, mate, not too bad. SmackDown was so busy this week. I've just finished the show and graded. I feel like it's going to be 958 hours long.
Is
which
busy
is only
a good thing?
Slightly longer than usual, but still longer.
Busy a good thing or a busy a bad thing?
It's hard to sort of say, but it was mainly all good stuff. Just far too much to cram in, obviously, in the build-up to Royal Rumble. But, you know.
Wow, Alicious, that's a bit of a shame because SmackDown's been on a roll. But here are your news headlines. The Royal Rumble 2021 Universal title match has been changed with a saucy stipulation added. An AEW star says they would have stayed with WWE if they hadn't have been released. And two WWE superstars have been listed among the top earners on Instagram. Find out who in a little bit. So, of course, as we saw on last week's SmackDown as the show was coming to an end, the lifeless body of one Adam Pearce was draped over the lifeless body of one Shinsuke Nakamura. As Adam Pearce, Sam, he won that gauntlet match. He qualified for the Royal Rumble Universal title match against Roman Reigns. Now, I was saying coming out of last week's SmackDown, calm down everybody who was crapping on Adam Pearce, the five-time, you know what I mean, NWA World Heavyweight Champion, being in the Universal title match here in 2021. And I was right, and I'm going to take this one. I'm going to run with it because it looks like, Sam, well, it was just a storyline plot point as we're doing long-term stories on SmackDown now, and it's so refreshing to see because we flicked on this week's show and Roman Reigns and Paul Heyman, they decided that this Universal title match, which at the time was still against Adam Pearce, it needed a stipulation. Initially, it was made a no DQ match before Roman Reigns said, "No, Paul, I don't want one of them. Me toys are out the pram. I want a last man standing match instead." So we go down to the ring. The contract was signed by both Adam Pearce and Roman Reigns. But then what happened, Sam?
So Adam Pearce was just sort of sat there and, you know, eventually Roman signs it and he's like, "I've been waiting for you to do that all night." And he gets out of the ring and just walks to the back. And Roman, Heyman and Jay are a bit like, "All right, weirdo." And then he gets halfway up the ramp and he tweaks his knee and he's like, "Oh." And then he keeps walking and his knee's getting worse and he's like, it's nagging injuries, you know how they are. And then he goes on about the fact that all WWE title match contracts have the same thing written in them, which is card subject to change. And because Pearce feels that he will not be medically cleared in time for the Rumble because of this nagging injury of his in his knee, he has to find a suitable replacement. And as a WWE official, he can do that. So he finds a suitable replacement in Kevin Owens, and Roman Reigns doesn't look happy. But I really like this here. I'm a bit annoyed, if I'm being honest, that we're not getting that Pearce match because I just thought it was something really interesting that we could have done there. I knew it probably wasn't going to happen at the Rumble. I was expecting maybe we'd see it on SmackDown. Maybe we still will, but probably not. It's just going to be a big old Roman beatdown of Pearce. But what I liked here was that Roman he's beaten everybody on the roster, really, into place, and he's the guy at the head of the table. And then this week, Jay was talking about, people backstage need to pay them more respect. He went off at Charles Robinson for not allowing him a cheap pin and threatened to have him fired. Roman's been doing something similar with Pearce, and he's trying to play the political game, but Pearce, as the veteran and as somebody who works in the most political atmosphere in the company, just served it right back to him. And Roman has sort of been done over here, like a bit of a mug, and it's great.
And that's the first time, and it's going to be interesting to see how he reacts going forward as we continue with this weekly episodic television wrestling show called SmackDown. It's amazing, isn't it? Makes you want to tune in next week to see what happens.
It's cracking.
What a novel concept.
It's so good.
Elsewhere on last night's SmackDown, we saw last week on SmackDown, I should say, we saw a handshake between Shinsuke Nakamura and Daniel Bryan, leading a lot of people, including me, to believe that Shinsuke Nakamura was back to being a proper bona fide babyface in WWE. And last night we got confirmation as his babyface theme, Sam, it returned, pose and all.
It did, and it was such a beautiful moment. But perhaps the bigger thing coming out of this, we've got Nakamura face again, pushing him toward that lovely title picture, fingers crossed. But the biggest thing coming out of this was that Cesaro isn't quite ready to let go of the past, it looks like. Because backstage, Bryan was talking about him and Nakamura, and Cesaro popped up and he's like, "He's not your friend. He's my friend. I know him better than you. And Cesaro, I think, is struggling to come to terms with the fact that maybe Nakamura isn't quite as nasty and heely as he was only a couple of weeks ago. So we're going to probably see those two feud first and foremost.
Do you reckon at the Rumble, or is that too soon?
Oh, I'd like to see it. I'd like to see it. Maybe
I wouldn't, because I've got 25 quid on Nakamura winning the Rumble.
I think, well, Nakamura could still win, but I think they're going to have an interaction of some sort in the Rumble match that's going to lead to something a bit more concrete down the line. But fingers crossed Nakamura does win the Rumble, because, yeah.
Elsewhere on SmackDown, Sam, we saw an interesting thing booked for next week's show, and that will see Bayley and Bianca Belair competing against each other in an obstacle course. How did this one come about?
So what we had was Bayley debuting a new segment. I think it's called Ding Dong Hello, and it has a door in the middle of the ring, and so she invites Bianca Belair out as the first guest. So Belair comes down the ramp, gets into the ring, and has to go through the door and ring the doorbell and everything. But Bayley, just continuing on what she's been doing to Bianca since Bianca arrived, just running her down. She takes issue with the fact that Bianca is the EST, she's the best, the fastest, the strongest, anything. Like Bianca is the best at it. And she sees that as sort of, talking down to the veterans and that, and then Bianca's like, well, we can have a match right now if you want, and Bayley's like, no, I think we need to do something that showcases all your abilities. Let's have an obstacle course.
Hopefully it goes down better than Sami Zayn and Bobby Lashley did a few years ago in the midst of that horrible feud. But no doubt about it, I've got faith in SmackDown. They'll
make it work. This is the thing. They'll make it work somehow, and I'll be sat next week going, how have they done that?
Yeah. And then just elsewhere, we had Cesaro, going back to him, confirming his place in the Men's Rumble match, meaning the field, as of right now, is Cesaro, Daniel Bryan, Bobby Lashley, AJ Styles, Randy Orton, if indeed that rumoured match with The Fiend doesn't happen at the Royal Rumble, Otis, The Miz, and Jey Uso. And then finally from last night's show, Sam, did we see Apollo Crews join Roman Reigns' ranks?
This is interesting because they were really hyping up the whole Heyman Apollo Crews stuff, the talking smack bit where Heyman was getting him riled up and talking about taking the IC title and establishing himself and things like that. And then we go backstage and Crews is just there with Roman, and like Roman's talking to him about leadership and what it takes, and this is how you do it, this is how you get things done around here. And Crews is intently listening to him and nodding. Then Heyman comes back, and Crews, as you would in a situation like that, gets to go up. He's like, oh, I'll excuse myself, and Roman's like, no, sit down. You can learn a lot. And so Crews seems to be orbiting around this bloodline group of Roman, Jey, and Heyman at the moment, and that group's obviously going to expand at some point, I'd imagine. But maybe it's maybe they are looking for him as a full-time member, but they're more likely in my head they're looking at him because Roman's being so political at the moment. It's going to probably be more like they're just looking for somebody who's easy to control, who they can put in charge of the IC division until somebody they want to have the belt comes along. But they can keep Crews on a leash and keep him sort of there at the top of the IC division if he wins that belt, and he will do their bidding. I guess that's what I think's going to happen there. But Crews, I mean, God, he had such a good performance last night, and he really, really looked the part. It's a level of aggression we've not seen from him yet. So, fingers crossed this turns into something juicy.
That was the thing with Big E that I took from it, is that Apollo Crews could be a very good heel.
Oh, yeah.
The aggression he showed when he slapped Big E and turned a bit more into an arsehole, it just looked right on him,
well,
didn't
that was it. He took the belt from Big E as well, who was at ringside on a big cream couch this week. But yeah, he took the belt just before he leaves the arena area, and he's like just looking at it and then eventually hands it back. But he's gone in for that title.
And so next week, I think it got confirmed that Big E will defend the title against Apollo Crews. So We'll see what happens there. But now moving on, an AEW star has said they wouldn't have left WWE if the company didn't release them last year as part of the big releases that happened in the spring, of course. And that star, Sam, is Serena Deeb, who was speaking on the AEW Unrestricted podcast and said that her release was simply down to the pandemic and WWE doing all these cuts and cost-cutting measures and all that stuff in the midst of making record profits. We've all read about it, haven't we? Of course, Serena Deeb was a trainer at the Performance Center, and I tell you what, WWE's the Performance Center's loss has really been AEW/NWA's game because she is fantastic. Liquid wrestling gets thrown about a lot, Sam, but she is so smooth inside that wrestling ring.
I think we all sort of forgot about Serena Deeb until she came back to the AEW stage and she really showed that she can still bring it, and it's just been really refreshing to see that. And so while it is a shame that she had to leave her position as I think she was one of the head trainers of the Performance Center, wasn't she? While she had to leave that position, which must have been like a really fulfilling position, I imagine, if you truly love wrestling, getting to work with the next generation of stars must be really, really awesome. But at least she's found her feet and is doing something that has made her somehow. This situation has allowed her to become more prominent than ever before, I'd argue.
Yeah, she was saying that she wants to turn this negative into a positive. She said it's probably the best thing that ever happened to her in her career, which I would maybe agree with because she wasn't wrestling on TV this time last year, and now she very much is. And then a fan went on to ask her if she would have left WWE if the Reese hadn't have happened, and she said, I thought about that a lot. I think the answer is no. I was embracing that chapter and following the path that seemed right in my life. When I was offered the coaching job, it felt really right. I felt like it was more my time to give back in that way. It was a matter of following the path, and that path seemed right for me at that time. She sounds like Brendan Rodgers, but that's besides the point. Fantastic wrestler, and it's good to see her in such a prominent role in what is a flounder in women's division, I should say, on AEW at the moment. Yeah, she's really one of the highlights. And then finally, according to a report from Love UX, if they're reliable, I've got no idea. There are 2 WWE superstars inside of the top 100 earners on Instagram, Sam. Oof. If I could ask you for a couple of guesses, who do you reckon it is?
Are we counting like former people like The Rock? Because The Rock's got to be up there, right?
2 active.
Oh, active. Sorry, members. I completely... My brain's gone. SmackDown was so long. 2 active roster members. I've got no idea, Ross. Who is it?
Let me tell you, it's Lana and it's Mandy Rose. Lana, sorry, I should say Mandy first. She is number 100 in the top 100 earners on Instagram, allegedly making a whopping $490,104 from 71 sponsored posts, which is an average of $6,902 per post. And then Lana, she's number 83 in the list, apparently making $625,922 off 59 sponsored posts, which is an average, Sam, of $10,608 per post. And I tell you what, more power to those lasses. If that's an avenue stream they can go down, I reckon you just take every single penny you can get from that. And by the way, while we're here, nobody show Vince McMahon this news video because we don't want to see Vince McMahon now taking control of the Instagram, do we?
Yeah, I mean, it's the Instagram's being personal feeds. I feel, it's similar to the Twitch situation, and it's just... If it's a revenue source that the company can just allow these people to have, and I get maybe you won't want certain products being advertised if they have partnerships with other companies, but there needs to be some sort of, they need to allow the stars to do this because they have the opportunity. It'd be criminal not to let them do it. But at the end of the day, Ross, it just doesn't compare though in the long run, does it, being on that list, to the fact that if you Google any of us, apparently we've got net worth in the tens of millions.
I'll trump you there, Sam, because
I'm apparently worth £92 million. Now, I don't have to, I don't know who I've got to talk to about this, but £92 million.
Mine's 91 billion.
I could do a lot with that. 91 billion?
91 billion I'm worth, apparently. I saw that a few years... This was a few years ago. I know I've fallen from grace a bit since then, of course. But just in case you're wondering how Lana and Mandy compare in relation to other big stars on Instagram, the top 5, Virat Kohli, the cricketer, of course, he gets an estimated $10.2 million per year from Instagram posts. He did 53 posts last year. Messi... 33 sponsored posts, and he apparently earned somewhere in the region of $14.2 million. Ellen DeGeneres, 60 posts last year, $15.4 million. Kevin Hart, 70 sponsored posts, $18.3 million. And Cristiano Ronaldo is number 1 guy on Instagram, 38 sponsored posts at an estimated pay packet of $24.4 million for 38 posts. Boom. There we go.
We're in the wrong game here. I think what we should have done, Ross, before, coming onto the internet world of wrestling is go away. One of us get a really successful show in the US. one of us become one of the best footballers of all time. I think we can handle that. And then
it's easy, isn't it?
if we'd done that before we started doing what we do now, we'd be laughing, wouldn't we?
We just need to become one of those influencers, don't we, Sam? We need to just put down the McDonald's, go to the gym endlessly, get a six-pack and start posing in mobs and stuff with some
The
vodka
tightest
and
shirts imaginable.
little pair of budgie smugglers. That's what everyone wants to see, me and Sam and a pair of budgie smugglers. But there we have it. More power to Lana and Mandy, of course. Those were your Saturday morning wrestling news headlines. Any closing remarks, Samuel?
No, as I said, I'll be getting ungraded straight after I've edited this, but it might be a bit of a longer show, but hopefully it'll go out around the same time, and you'll obviously be on WTF as well, won't you?
Yes, I will. Check those out on this YouTube channel later today. And while we're here, I streamed FIFA last night for the first time. I'm going to do it again tomorrow morning. Sunday morning, I'll be back after Adam's done with the Impact Wrestling live stream tonight on this very YouTube channel. I'll be back on Twitch, twitch.tv/Cultaholic with some more FIFA 2021, the Shane McMahon special, and Mr. Fafana will be taking the piss once again. But goodbye for now, everybody. Wave to the camera, Sam. Have a lovely day.
Have
a lovely day.